Ireland was once part of like the great patrimony of the church. It was one of the hotbeds of Catholicism in the Western world. Barely a century and a half ago, Catholics there suffered great persecution at the hands of the English, driving many of them to come to the United States. And those who stayed in Ireland clung to their faith when they were faced with horrible, evil things done to them, so they would convert. A century and a half later, you can barely find Catholicism in Ireland, relatively speaking. There are certainly still Catholics in Ireland who are firm in their faith. There are enclaves of Catholicism clinging to the faith. There are Irish Catholics watching this right now in Ireland, clinging to the faith. I am in contact with a few periodically who will let me know things going on in their country. The country needs your prayers. You see, while the rest of the world was showing outpouring of sympathy and interest with the passing of Pope Francis, Ireland was different. In Ireland, the government did not fly the flags at half-staff or do their equivalent in Ireland to show respect for the passing of the Roman pontiff. Instead, they kind of mocked the whole thing. In fact, you started seeing these stories of criminal activity happening, Catholic churches vandalized, and Irish television mocking the Catholic Church. Truly astonishing things. Let's start here. I will show you, unfortunately, probably the best example of this. This is a clip from an Irish television show posted by Catholic Sat on X, or Catholic Arena on X. He says, Irish TV station Virgin Media has used the death of Pope Francis tonight to launch tirades about the need for women priests. Here's one of the station's typical offerings on the Latin Mass and Catholicism. You really need to listen right to the end. Now, I will say this for context. They are talking about Harrison Butker here, the American football player who is a traditional Catholic who got in trouble last year for giving a commencement address to a Catholic university with a Catholic audience where he said very traditionally Catholic things. And then they go into how Harrison Butker was against all the evils in the culture today that people like these people on this channel you're about to see champion. And they excoriate him for it, and then they say something truly absurd in here. But we're going to get right past all the evil thought crime he has to really what the thrust of their concern is.
So hardcore Catholicism, and he's part of this thing that is called the Latin Mass movement, which kind of nominally is about wanting the masses to still be in Latin. But really what they are is they're a movement that is totally against Pope Francis and against his more what they would see as liberal views. They're very much, let's get back to core Catholic values. So
but he does play American football, which traditionally is a pigskin, which Catholics aren't allowed to touch on a Sunday.
That's news to me, by the way. Am I missing somewhere in a catechism, any catechism, that says we're not allowed to touch a pigskin on a Sunday? Now, you might say, well, it's not good that Harrison Butker, a professional football player, works on Sunday, but that's a different story. Her claim was that we are not allowed to touch a pigskin on a Sunday. Presumably, that woman was baptized a Catholic, or her parents were baptized Catholics, and they have forgotten the most basic teachings of the faith. Now, that's TV and TV celebrities. You don't really expect much out of them. But here we have this. This happened from Catholic Arena, a hate group called Official Protestant Coalition today targeted a Catholic shrine in Ireland. The shrine is of Father Gentili. They also targeted the grave of Catholic priest Father Aloysius Gentili and mocked it in a photo displaying anti-Catholic propaganda. And their anti-Catholic propaganda says, no Pope in Rome, no Pope in Rome. And then it's got, a red hand. If you're Irish, let people know in the comments what that symbol means. You are going to be much more familiar with it than I am. But this happened April 22nd, 2025. That's when this post was made. It was clearly in response to the things happening in the news. Yes, they took whatever you else might think of Pope Francis, it is a pretty ugly thing to go after Catholics on the day that the highest figure in the church, the highest profile religious figure in the world, other than maybe the Dalai Lama, goes to his maker. That's a kind of a extreme thing to do, I'd think. But that's, of course, not the only thing. Catholic Arena also posted this the next day. Fans of anti-Catholic football club Rangers, yes, their professional sports teams there will be divided along Catholic and anti-Catholic lines, mocked the death of Pope Francis with graffiti after his death, writing Papa Francesco is dead. Hours later, Celtic fans painted over it with graffiti of their own. And there you see the anti-Catholic graffiti. Papa Francesco is dead. No Pope of Rome. Yada yada yada. And then there is, of course, what the Catholic fans did. No flags or drums. It was their response. This is all very strange if you are an outsider in America like myself watching this, because the United States itself has its own anti-Catholic history. Our history is filled with stories of Archbishop like Dagger John, and I think it was New York, threatening the mayor, saying, as around the country at the time, you had Catholic churches being burned and Irish and Italian Catholics standing shoulder to shoulder to protect their parishes and their communities. And the mayor of New York just sort of smiling at him and telling him, hey, this could happen next here. And Dagger John said, go ahead and try it. We'll burn the 5 boroughs to the ground. That was his response. Fascinating story. But since then, especially since the 60s, the anti-Catholic sentiment is mostly reduced to online arguments. Really, it's what it's reduced to. Yes, you'll occasionally encounter somebody in real life in the United States who doesn't care much for Catholics and will tell you to your face. But beyond that, it's all very kind of quiet here. We don't have the situation like in Ireland. So I'm curious, if you're Irish, what is it like if you're living in those parts of Ireland where things are tense, especially the more Protestant parts of Ireland, where there are places where there are plenty of Catholics and Protestants having to coexist? What's it like? And is it worse from the secularists? Is there any kind of collegiality between Protestants and Catholics when the secular authorities don't just dislike the Catholic Church, they dislike Christ himself? And that should cause some solidarity, you would think. But none of this surprises me. I'm surprised it wasn't more widespread. I was a little surprised we didn't see the government of Spain moving in onto the Valley of the Fallen. Yeah, there's the bishops of Spain are still there, but they're complicit in what's going on in that. They probably wouldn't stand against it if the Spanish government tried to move in on this. I was a little surprised to see that you didn't have more overt restrictions on the Catholic Church happening in some other places. But perhaps I'm just cynical. I'm curious, though, what do you think of this? Are you surprised that this kind of thing happened in Ireland, of all places? Do you expect to see more of it? Especially if the next pope is a harder line Catholic pope on, well, Catholicism, if he's more orthodox in his belief, actually upholds the traditional teachings of the church on all those hot button issues that the world hates the church for. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments, please. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It certainly helps out, sharing this on social media. That helps too. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.